Birding expert again, and welcome to Anti-Aging Unraveled this evening. I am so excited to have the CEO of one of my favorite new procedures with us. It is Stacey Reynolds. She is with Les Encres, and I'm sure I said that terribly, but I apologize to anyone.
Flawlessly.
And she's a CEO of the company, and we're really excited to talk about these dissolvable threads. It's one of the hottest new procedures on the market. I love doing them, to be honest. They've kind of grown on me over the last couple of years. And I'm excited to hear how Stacey started this company and where it came from and the launch and all that stuff. So I think what we'll start with is we'll talk about her, which is always fun to talk about yourself. And then we'll kind of morph a little bit into what threads are. I've gotten a lot of questions and actually got some questions in my inbox last week about what threads are, how they work, all those good things and where we can use them. I'll give some patient examples so all you guys can start lifting and playing with your faces while you're listening and watching, because that's what we do. If you're not watching me live, I almost always do that. Um, so without further ado, I'll let Stacey kind of take us in, Stacey, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks again, Dr. Gerber, for having me on. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And looking forward to uncovering the world of threads for individuals who are curious to learn more. I actually had a thread procedure done about 4 years ago, and I was hooked. I was mesmerized that within a 2 hour period, I could walk out of my injector's office and have, like you said, a whole new face, and neck, I'll be honest. And I just for days thought and thought and thought about what a great product it was. And the more research I did, the more I started to see a theme with some of the existing companies that were in place at the time, which were very few. But I noticed that there was a lot of smoke and mirrors from my perspective as a consumer. And the more I talked to my injector and started talking to other individuals in the industry, the more I realized that they felt the same way about the smoke and mirrors, so to speak. And it was really kind of the wild west of threads at that time. There was no set protocol, there was no set post care, pre care instructions. There was no clarity for injectors about the insertion techniques and contraindications. And as a business person, it kind of raised my red flags a little bit to think, hmm, maybe there's an opportunity here in the market at the ground level to start something that has authenticity, integrity, credibility, science, safety, that can really lay a foundation and create structure around what's good threading and what's not so good threading. And that was kind of the birth of my career into the aesthetic industry and really the birth of Les Encres.
And so you have a business background. Did you start in business? Was it?
Truth be told, Lori, I have always been quoted as saying, I don't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body.
Well, you obviously have some bones. Yeah.
um, I never had a desire to start my own business. I actually worked for a Fortune 500 company for many years, doing leadership development and training, and it never occurred to me. And again, at this precipice in my life personally, I knew that I was going to be transitioning into an empty nest. I knew that I had a short, small window of time to either stay in the career path that I was in and keep on the upward trajectory or make that shift. And with the support of my husband at the time, or still is, but with the support of my husband, he really, really pushed and said, do it, do it. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, you can always go back, but do it. I believe in you. And so we traveled the globe, no joke. We went to Switzerland, France, Italy, China, South Korea, all over the US to find the best manufacturing partner we possibly could. And we interviewed a lot of people. We went to the places where everybody said their threads were made from, and ultimately chose what we believe and have found to be the best partner for us in South Korea. So that'll answer everybody's burning question right there, is where we're made from. All of our raw materials are sourced from South Korea, and our threads are manufactured in South Korea.
Honestly, let's be truthful. They usually lead with the most cutting edge cosmetic topical dermatologics in the world, generally speaking. So
Generally speaking, they do. So we are thrilled with that business relationship and have had no issues whatsoever with them.
wonderful. So all right. So you decided to just jump ship. Got it. So we went into Lights on Gray. I like it. It's very bold, right? So you got these threads done and you liked the lift that they gave you and you decided that it needed more protocols, more stipulations, more safety and efficacy, right? And you're right, there was no protocols. I mean, you're right, it was the Wild West. It was willy-nilly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so let's talk a little bit about what threads are and why they're different. And obviously, I'll chime in with some of the science parts of this. But, as a business owner, what are your threads? What are they made out of? And kind of, and I'll talk a little bit about history too. But feel free, go for it.
Sure. So we refer to threads as cosmetic sutures. A lot of people say, oh, PDO thread lift. Well, there's so much more to threads than lifting, first of all, and PDO. So we are one of the only companies in the US that offers PDO, so polydioxone threads. We offer poly L lactic acid threads, and then poly L caprolactone threads. And the polycaprolactone is really where a lot of people have the most questions that generates the most buzz. So we'll come back to that. But the PDO threads are the purple suture material that is inserted inside of a cannula. And as you know, they're inserted into the skin, generally into the SMAS if you're doing a reposition or lifting of the tissue. And very little downtime, very little pain if inserted properly, and amazing results that can last anywhere from 18 to 24 months with PDO, about 18 to 24 months with PLLA, and then studies have shown 2 to 4 years of the aesthetic result for polycaprolactone.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk a little bit about, and I know some of these letters get thrown out at you guys. So PD, I know, and I can't even say them, so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going
That's
to say
okay.
chemical words, right? PDO, and I'm not even going to pretend. PDO, just so everybody is aware, is really kind of what traditional biodegradable sutures are made out of. So when you're working surgically or you're closing up a wound, this is where this comes from. And it was, I think it was 1960, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
when the FDA approved dissolvable suture.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's been around for a long time, right? This is
Okay.
something that is not new to the body. Our bodies have seen this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And PLLA, and I'm not as familiar with I can't even say it, caprolactone. But PLLA is what colloquially we know as Sculptra, right? It's Sculptra, which is a
It's the
filler.
semi-crystalline version of Sculptra. So
Right.
if you're getting Sculptra or PLLA, liquid PLLA, you're getting filler. And the PLLA threads act just like the filler, only they won't migrate, they won't move. So you can get that really specific insertion point, and you know that that volumization is going to be right where you put that thread.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So we use it as a layering technique, right? So I always say it's like hashtags. You kind of
Yeah.
like throw in a whole lot of hashtags, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, and that's an alpha hydroxy acid filler in general and thread. So they're made from alpha hydroxy acids, which are again our skin has seen many, many times over.
Absolutely. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about I'm not even gonna say it, polycaprolactone, right?
Polycaprolactone.
So what is the difference? Why does it last longer?
Yep. So the polycaprolactone is much more hydrophobic than the PLLA or the PDO. So it actually, poly PCL, I'll just keep it easy for
Yeah,
everybody. PCL was introduced into the world of biopolymers back in the 1930s, which most people don't quite realize that it was been around that long. As a matter of fact, I'll hear people talk about, PCL, it's illegal or it's not FDA approved. Well, it is. It's been around for many, many years, and it was used primarily as a drug delivery device. So it would be used to coat Tylenol, for example, so we could swallow it nice and easy. And back in the 70s and 80s, it really kind of emerged in more of the drug delivery area with popularity and was quickly replaced for decades with more faster absorbable biopolymers that were just better for what they were intended for. And it's really come about in a resurgence here in the last probably 5 to 7 years because it gets the same results as the PDO, but it lasts longer. So what really kind of put this polymer on the back shelf for so many in the medical world is what has brought it, it's the exact reason it's come about now. And because of the molecular structure and how the body absorbs it and degrades it, it creates more type 1 and type 3 collagen than PLLA or PDO. So we often refer to the PCL threads as the cashmere of our threads because they just do it all. They do it all.
So why so do any of the other companies on the market offer PCL threads?
Some are slowly starting to.
Okay.
It's widely popular over in South Korea, in China. It's really primarily the only suture they use now for
Yeah.
the lifting and repositioning of the skin. PDO is kind of passe, so to speak. And we like it here in the US. We like PDO here in the US because it's cheaper and it gets the job done. It's kind of the workhorse of the threading industry, but more and more people are starting to see the exposure to PCL because of us bringing it to the market here in the US and the results that it demands. It really is stunning the difference between someone who's had a PCL thread lift versus a PDO thread lift.
So that's interesting. So just so you guys know from my practice, so I have never used PCL threads. I traditionally was using a couple of other companies in the past, and upon doing research for this, and I've used Lace Encres for, gosh, probably right at the start of COVID. I started with you guys, so I've been with you a bit and have never used them, and I kind of started doing research before we came on
Mhm.
the air in the last couple of days and weeks, and I was really interested by the PCL threads, and it literally is used all over the world, to be honest, except for here. And I was curious why it wasn't brought to the mainstream of the United States, and why we weren't using it more. That
Mhm.
was, because now I'm interested. My next order, I might be bringing in some PCLs because, listen, I'm more than willing to try them. And I think that if they're going to last longer, and just so you guys know, type 1 and type 3 collagen are really what's responsible for your skin elasticity, right? So we're creating new collagen in addition to lifting. And we're going to talk a little more about that. But I'm interested in the PCLs. So I think that's something that when I was doing my reading and for my next order, that might be part of my next order.
Mhm.
Um, so
You won't be disappointed. I joke and say it's the gift that keeps on giving. You can see the results immediately, but with the PCL, because it takes so long for the body to break it down and absorb it, that you just are getting such continual rejuvenation and neocollagenesis that it's 4 months out. You'll look in the mirror, you're like, that's even better than the day I had it done. And you don't often see that, or
right.
not everybody sees that with PDO, for example.
And do
So
you offer them in smooths? We're going to talk about the different types, guys, but there's smooths and textured or twisties or
there's all kinds of
okay.
different. Everybody loves the magic of the cog or the barbed lifting threads because they're fun, they're sexy, they get the job right. Exactly, they get the
We're
job
lifting up our
done.
face, guys. Yes.
Right. But really where the money is for people as business, for return on investment, and then also for patients, if you really want to get to the core of what you're trying to do, which is either lift and tighten or smooth and resurface, those mono threads and the screw threads, i, I think they're a million times more efficient than the barbed threads,
So
which
let's talk about that. So what is a mono thread? I mean, I know this is for my people. What is a mono thread? Because you actually do this a little bit differently too than most of the companies on the market.
Mhm.
So what's the difference? What are these smoothie ones, the smooth threads, and what are the difference between the two types that you just spoke?
Sure. So the smooth or the mono threads are hair-like sutures, basically, that are inserted superficially or just a little bit deeper, depending on what you're trying to do. And they create and stimulate collagen, total rejuvenation, and they will tighten the skin over time as the body starts to absorb them. So they're highly effective in getting those fine lines and wrinkles taken care of, getting rid of crepey skin. If you've got some dimpling on the legs or buttocks, hypothetically speaking, you can use the mono threads to help tighten and smooth that skin. You can also use a screw, or some people refer to them as twisted threads. And it's that same mono thread, but it's been twisted around the cannula or the needle. And when it is inserted into the skin, it holds its cyclical shape. So you get the volumization with the screw threads. And those are great, again, for any deeper fine lines and wrinkles, um, dimpling of the skin, crepiness, all of that jazz. So you don't always have to use the barbed threads when you're looking at getting a PDO or a thread lift treatment. You can use the mono and the screw to accomplish, I don't want to say the same thing because that would be unfair, but similar.
Yeah, I like to say it's like a hammock. It kind of gives you some gentle support. Um, or sometimes I say box spring and mattress because I think that's the best way to think about it. Yeah, you like that? Now
I like
you're gonna
that.
feel it, right?
That
So
one.
it's again, when we work with those hashtags, right? Because when we put these in, it's all about layering, right? So when we put these into you guys, it's sometimes we do a little topical numbing or a little fine injectable numbing, and they literally go in very easily. If you ever watch a video, it actually looks horrific. It really does. And I would say from a non-medical perspective for anybody watching these, and I'm sure before you started this company, if you had gone on YouTube and watched this, it looks pretty
Barbaric.
barbaric, yes.
Mhm.
But believe it or not, once you get through that top layer of skin, really in between there in the subcutaneous tissue, and when you even when you go through the smaz, there's really not nerve endings. We're not feeling anything.
Mhm.
It's I always say it's the insertion point and where it ends, right? They're the two spots where you're gonna feel, any kind of pinchy nerve kind of pain,
Mhm.
that you would say is pain. Everything else is pulling. But when you put the smooths in, I like to say it's like we're giving you a cradle. We're putting a whole bunch in. Sometimes it's parallel to the problem area, sometimes they're perpendicular. A lot of times we crisscross them. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to give a gentle support structure or a box spring for that mattress to sit on top of. And then over time, um, and I think this is really nice to think about with the under eye because we do it all the time on the under eye. When you put these in, and actually it goes in with a wire, and we'll talk a little more about that. And then you pull out the wire, the guide wire, and it leaves the thread inside. And I always say it's like a scoop and a pull. We're giving you a little, like a snapback. It's like taking a hammock and pulling it tight.
Mhm.
And that's what happens when you layer these in there and your body says, "Ooh, what's this stuff?" And it literally recruits cells to the area to start creating one breakdown because it doesn't want it to be there, right? It's like almost like a little inflammation response. But the real thing is that it's coming in to repair and heal, and it puts collagen down.
Mhm.
So, um, I think in the beginning of threads, I completely underestimated the power of smooths.
Everybody is.
And I will tell you, maybe the last, I'm going to say year ish, um, I have been so much more prone to throwing in, even if it's like I'm doing some filler and I just want to enhance my filler, around the jowl, right down turn of the mouth, the
Mhm.
fine little lines that you just can't get into with a needle without it looking stupid sometimes, and just throwing some twisties in there and some smooths and just layering them up and then telling people to let me know how they look in 4 to 6 weeks because you're right. It
Mhm.
gets so much better.
Mhm.
Um,
It's incredible, and it's I've taken it as part of my personal and professional mission in this space to really get the word out about mono and screw threads. Again, the lifting threads are wonderful. We sell a lot of them, so
yeah.
keep buying them. Don't stop using them. But to expand your base of tools to use when you're looking at a patient, if you dance into the mono and screw world, you are going to have so much more opportunity to really get the results tailored to the patient's needs.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to talk about, and people are like, "Oh, why should I do this? Why pick this over filler?" Let's just,
Mhm.
for example, um, let me give you guys a couple examples, and then I'm going to ask you what you think about picking your right patient because I think that's probably the most important thing. Well,
Absolutely.
with cog threads specifically, it's probably the most important thing. Smooths, I think we have a lot more flexibility and twists with the patient choice, but I had a couple patients, actually, I've done at least 3 or 4 threads this week. So, first patient, jawline, jowl, doesn't like the hanging. A younger patient, maybe in her early 40s, not so it doesn't have a ton of hanging, and just wants some kind of support. She wants her jawline back. I think that's probably one of the most common patients that I get,
Mhm.
for threads, and I think any of the threads will really work well for that patient, whether it's the pulling, the cogs. I hate the word barbs. I think it sounds again, it sounds so terrible and barbaric for my patients.
Mhm.
So I've tried to pick up your cog, terminology, but the cogs, and what it does is you put them in and you actually just give them that little jawline back. You're kind of giving them a lift, and I like to use multiple directions. I'm not a single direction pull type of girl. I think our face ages in so many different places that sometimes
Absolutely.
it requires, yes, you're doing maybe more than one poke, but we're getting pulling in multiple planes, which gives it a much more natural look.
And that word right there, Lori, natural.
Yeah,
That's why a lot of people prefer to have a thread lift because they don't want that super pulled back look.
right.
They don't want the fake look, so to speak. And with the threads, again, your body's creating its own collagen. So you are getting this very natural, very smooth, polished look without having to have a lot of work done, but it's your natural look, and that's really really important for a lot of individuals.
Yeah, I think, again, I encourage people not to watch videos because I think that's the part that kills them. Because really we just numb up a spot and we make a little hole, or actually kind of a bigger hole, but, and then we just slide these in, and there's really very little discomfort. I will say, like I said, it looks terrible, but there's not a lot of discomfort. I did get a question, is how they anchor. So maybe we can talk, it was on a yeah, on Facebook. Maybe we can talk a little bit about how the cogs work,
Sure.
the bidirectional, and it's a little hard to picture. That's why we call them barbs, I think, for everybody out there, because they literally feel, if you actually touch them, I think they feel like Velcro.
Mhm.
Um, that's the best way I can explain it. So let's talk a little bit about how the barbs actually click or how they hold.
Sure. So the barbs, if you imagine a string, they get cut in, and ours are at 25 degrees angle, which is really important because it's about 10 degrees more than competitors out there,
Oh, okay.
which a lot of injectors will use our threads and say, "My gosh, I got such better lift than with XYZ threads that I've used in the past." Why is that? Well, you've got 10% in each barb more room for soft tissue to anchor into, which when you set those threads, you're pressing that skin into the cog, which is helping lift and hold that tissue in place. And it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah,
It's
no, I will say from experience, the Les Encres threads are definitely one, they're easier to place. They're much easier to get into the skin. And I don't know if there's any reason for that. You can definitely let me in on that.
our cannulas.
Okay.
We use a different grade of cannula that is better than a lot of our competitors out there. And it costs us a little bit more money to manufacture, but it's important because when you are putting that in, it's nice and smooth and still flexible and strong enough to get right into that plane. You're not going to have this wavering up and down, which a lot of individuals get puckering afterwards because that cannula has been bouncing up and down in there. So we've got a really nice high grade cannula, very smooth. It helps push the tissue out of its way and get right to that point of insertion that you're looking for.
Yeah,
So that's
it's
why.
much easier to get in, I will say. I don't know if it's like even this the amount of force it takes to get it through is less.
Mhm.
Um, so that's number one, and then two, I always say that, again, when I was working in multiple planes with previous threads, I'd really have to pay attention to concave, convex. What areas was I gonna? Because again, guys, we're talking about a really straight, kind of like one of those plastic sutures. If you think about what it feels like, it's like one of those like the blue or black ones that you'd have, even like on the outside is what it feels like. And
Mhm.
when you go to put that in across a curved plane, if those now I know 10-degree, barbs don't catch the skin correctly, and you're not getting it in certain areas to curve with the layer of skin, then you're actually seeing what I call a puppet string or
Mhm.
a line of where it didn't catch the skin, or vice or by the same token, maybe where it did catch the skin and it didn't catch it at the appropriate angle. So it's almost like like that puckering. I tell people it's like a ratchet strap. We're kind
Yep.
of getting a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and we ratchet it all the way up. And then we try not to get too much extra at the top, right? You're like, you kind of, and they have a little wiggle room. So you can
Hmm.
manipulate these a little bit before you anchor. Um, so that's interesting that it's 25 degrees. I did not know that.
Yeah.
And I will say that it makes it a very nice. I don't have to, I always think about planes, but I don't have to think as much about if I'm going to see it not catch. And the most common place, at least in my experience, is probably below the cheekbone, in between the cheekbone and the jawline, um, where people are really concave. And if you don't come across the right plane or you don't get a good curvature of your thread, you're just going to see what I call a line. Um,
Mhm.
goes back to being in the right area and the smaz. It also goes back to the thread choice, right? So kudos because and I'm hard to please. So
So am I.
so you know, I'm not easy to please. So I'm going to talk about another patient that comes in because I would say for that patient, I would use some cogs, but I have done in the past and actually did a couple the last couple weeks just using the smooths to give them
Mhm.
what I call that cradle or that support structure on the jawline or the jowl because it really does help. I did a whole talk, I think it was actually last week on the aging face, and unfortunately we lose our jawline, right? And we start to
Mhm.
lose the chin and the jaw, and this helps to get that skin up a little bit, but again, if you want that extra oomph, I agree that cog just does it. It's that immediate gratification.
Mhm.
Um, and sometimes what I tell people is maybe you do the cog now, you throw in some smooths, you come back 6 to 8 weeks later, throw in some more smooths, and then let your cog wear off, keep up with
Mhm.
your smooths, and see how much tightness you get with those.
You're on it, Lori. You're on it.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I joke around, it's like your immediate gratification, and
Mhm.
then your I say maintenance mode, right? So we gotta give you some immediate, otherwise you're gonna hate me and never wanna come back.
Right.
Um, but if I give you something that's always like a laser, if I'm doing something for your skin that's always gonna make it better, then why would you not keep putting that in?
Right.
And to me, that's how I would use these. And they're cheaper than filler in all honesty, and you probably need less of them than filler,
Mhm.
for the most part. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how I've been using them lately. That's my new kind of, I guess, diversion because I really, I was a filler girl. I'm a good filler girl. So
And you can still be a
yeah.
filler girl.
Oh, I do.
And absolutely, there are some people that just want their filler and that's it.
Yeah.
Don't give me threads. I just want filler. I just want Botox. But those are also the people that will come back to you in time and say, well, maybe we need a little bit more of this or
Well,
this. And
you can only
this
lift
is
so
an area,
much.
yeah, you can't do much here with a lot of the modalities you have.
Yeah.
Thread, right here, threads, thread by threads.
So let's talk about neck for a minute. I think that's probably and I'm going through the body parts little by little, guys. So if you have one that I haven't mentioned, I promise I'm going to get to it. The neck is probably the bane of all cosmetic dermatology surgeons. No, probably not surgeons, but all injectors in general. So how do you, as a company, envision using threads for the neck?
So
Like,
you can use the cog threads for a
okay.
neck lift for a much more aggressive or advanced technique. You can also use the smooth and the twists to fill in the necklaces and the neckline. You can use it to help tighten that double chin. You can use it to help really just create that nice, smooth crepiness disappear in the turkey neck area, so to speak. I know that's not a medical term, I'm sure,
Oh,
but
we love the words turkey neck. It's okay.
we really want to push and emphasize that value of the mono and screw threads in the neck and décolleté area. It's an easy treatment. It's quick. It's, I don't want to say painless, but relatively speaking, painless. And again, it's the gift that keeps on giving. You're going to see results increase over time with that rather than with the immediate pullback threads. But man, oh man, I know we're working our way down body parts, Lori, but
All right.
now I mentioned chest and
I
neck.
actually missed the eyes. I got to go back up anyway. So So the neck, the crepey neck and the crepey chest. So I do get a lot of that question because we obviously do lasers as well. So that crepey chest, and when you go to put those smooths in there, are you actually seeing a reduction in the crepiness and the texture
Absolutely.
and what I call the boob crinkle, right? It's like what
Mhm.
comes between. Um, I think that is underutilized as well in general. We can throw in a whole bunch of hashtags in there and cross hatching to try to create a smoother appearance. And I think that for people that maybe don't want to wait for lasers to work and all of this, or the burns and the downtime, this is a great option. And
It
it's
absolutely
again,
is.
I think it's cheaper in most instances than probably doing a session of 3 lasers.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, and it probably lasts you longer, right? Because you're always having collagen deposition where you're not constantly getting that stimulation after a laser. You get it once,
Mhm.
and then your body does what it's going to do, and then you get up to 8 weeks, and then you're kind of chasing your tail again.
Yep.
So let's talk about eyes a little bit because I think right now eyes and mid face, but eye lifts are super hot. The cat's eye is very in right now. So what are we doing for eyes? Are we using cogs? Are we using smooths? Under eye, same thing.
Yep. So with our kind of thread lineup, we have what we call our eye threads, and they're specifically for the infraorbital area of the eyes to help dark circles, crepey skin, fine lines and wrinkles around the eyes, crow's feet. And what's really nice about the eye threads is they're so small and so fine that you can really get in there all the way all the way to the very eyelid
Mhm.
or under eye area without complications. So I know there's a lot of controversy around, using filler on the under eye, and I won't address that because I'm not a medical professional, but I will tell you with the eye threads, you are able to get better results, longer results with zero complications whatsoever when you're putting those mono and screw threads in. The eye threads are blunt tip, so you're not going to have the bruising or the swelling that is associated quite often with some of the larger threads or even other modalities that you're using to treat that area. So we love the eye threads, love the eye threads. We have multiple injectors out there that are putting them nice and deep intradermal for the 11 lines, and you're actually freezing that muscle with the thread instead of using a neurotoxin, for example, or in addition to using a neurotoxin. And then you're able to fill in that deficit with the eye threads as well. And 11 lines are gone.
Yeah.
Gone. Yeah.
That's again, underestimating the power of these smooth threads. I have really become a huge fan of under eye threads. Actually, I'm ordering more today, because there are those patients that, and again, you're right, there's complications with eye, filler, and I actually have done a whole talk. I do a lot of liquid nose jobs as well, and I've done a whole talk on the dangers zones of injecting around the nose and the eyes. So that's a conversation for another day. But you with the threads, you're right. You're doing a blunt. You're not as deep. You're a lot more superficial. And you can throw in, and my patients are thrilled. I would say it's probably a middle aged patient, where it's maybe 30s to early 50s, maybe even mid 50s, to be honest, that love them. If they have a ton of volume loss, obviously it's not going to, when I say a ton of volume loss, guys, I mean like just a big bag kind of with the no volume in the middle. Um, they're probably a lid lift candidate anyway and not a filler candidate. But I love the smooth threads for the under eye. And I've actually been using them as well above the brow, for a brow lift. And, we're going to talk a little bit about the cogs for the cat's eye and the brow lift, but I get great results with some of the fine lines that are almost hard to get with Botox sometimes because they're so close to the nerve that lifts our eye, that putting twists and smooths in there, I'm getting great results. So, and I do have patients that just can't do Botox. They get too heavy. Oh, are you one of those?
I am
Oh, I'm sorry.
resistant. I know. You have no idea. Thank God. This is really why I had to start a thread company.
Right. You have a very big reason. I think that, I have a handful of patients that are definitely either resistant where they kick it off quickly or they just get heavy. Like even if I put 6 units in, their just eyes just feel heavy.
Right.
They get the ocular effects and they just can't tolerate it.
Hmm.
And of course they're the ones that need it the most, right? They're always the ones that yeah, that they have a lot of lines like me, you got a 6 head, especially today. You guys can see my 6, 7 head. Um and I've done smooths across the forehead. I actually do them kind of diagonally crisscrossed across your horizontals, so they're kind of
Uh-huh.
going on an angle. Um, and I've done twists in the lines as well, especially for my gentlemen who might be in TV or um, in the public eye that don't necessarily want to have no movement,
Right.
but they want their lines reduced and they don't have laser time.
Right.
I've used it a lot for that as well.
We've got injectors that are using our lip threads,
Mhm.
which are similar to our eye threads, only longer. And they're great for the Bermudian border, for all kinds of different things. But they're using the lip threads in the fine lines of the forehead, and
Oh,
it
okay.
pops those lines right out.
Yeah.
So lots of different areas to treat.
Yeah. So I think the only thing I didn't bring up, and I actually had a patient yesterday that I did this on. I think the cat's eye is really it's so big right now. And I have to say, I'm not in love with cat's eye. It's kind of my personal opinion, but
You and I share the same personal opinion. The cat eye or the foxy eye,
right.
everybody wants it. And you can achieve a nice look for the
Yes.
most part, but the longevity just really isn't there.
Right.
And it's not a question of the threads not lasting or even holding the lift. It's just from an anatomy standpoint, it's just not possible.
There's not a lot of grip up there, right? Like you
It's
don't have a lot of tissue, especially on someone that's really thin. So I think that might kind of go back to patient choice, right? And when we talk about these threads that pull, we talk about these textured or cogged threads. There is a perfect patient for those threads. If you've really heavy skin, I always joke. I say, "Can you hold a brick with a fishing line?" And
right,
9 times out of 10, someone says yes, but they're trying to joke with me, like, "You can do it." But
right,
really, the heavier your skin is, or the fuller that face is, it's you're going to need a million threads to hold it. It's the tensile strength is just not there.
correct.
Um, and likewise, if someone's really thin with really, really thin skin,
Hmm.
then we worry about the thickness of the threading. Are we going to be able to see that through
Right.
their skin? And that, to me, when we're trying to do the brow, is a concern. I'm like, I like a little brow lift, but if you can't move that forehead and they've been having neurotoxin for a long time, there's
Hmm.
there's
Yep.
no movement in there that's going to move their eyelid unless I click it to their eyelid, and then they're not going to be able to close their eye.
Right.
Right? So, this to me is, sometimes an unrealistic expectation or maybe what I would call a social media trend, but
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
do yeah, I do like a little bit of a brow lift with it, but I think, sometimes we over exaggerate the effects or maybe social media does, of how long a brow lift on the lateral eye, for these cat's eyes, these foxy eyes, all these things
Right.
works. Um,
Right.
but you're the patient choice. So this isn't for everybody, but the smooths and the twists really can help everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you nailed it when you talk about patient selection, is managing those expectations. You are only going to achieve what you can do with your fingers with threads. So if you can't if you can't manipulate the skin with your fingers, then it's not going to work with threads.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
So it's a good indicator, but that the heavier, thicker skin, it's just not designed for that, unfortunately.
Can we talk a little bit about nose?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right. So
yeah.
I believe it or not, I know I'm the nose queen, guys, but I'm going to be completely forthright. I've had rhino threads in my office now for probably because it was COVID. So probably 7 months. So they're probably done anyway. So I got to buy new. But I would love to start. I do a lot of liquid nose jobs, non invasive nose jobs with filler.
Hmm.
And I want to do nose jobs with threads. So let's talk a little bit about the versatility of what you can do with a thread in the nose.
Sure. So again, it goes back to expectations.
Mhm.
And I always like to share that when you're dealing with an airway, you want to make sure that you are experienced and skilled as an injector and you know what you're doing with the area and with the threads, because again, the nose is a whole
Mhm.
different ball game. And we've got nasal threads that you can help create that longer, thicker bridge nose, or even out the nose bridge right there. And then we've got a different thread that is used in the nose that can help adjust the tip, not just the width, but also the height. So there's lots of different opportunities to play, so to speak, but with experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've actually been trained on it. I've never did it because we had COVID and I never got a chance to. Then it became virtual and it was just a whole, whole pain in the
Yeah.
butt. But I get this all the time, can you just do, and I'm going to tell you what I'm doing is just pick up the nasal tip a little bit, or can we make my nose, the bump look a little bit less pronounced, right? Can we bring it up? And I
Yeah.
do that a lot with filler. And I've been doing that for several years. I've talked on the safety and efficacy at some conferences of injecting the nose. But threads, from a safety perspective, have a much safer profile in the nose than they do with filler, because filler, you have a sharp, you're putting it in, it's very close to these small little blood vessels. Whereas if you're using a blunt tip cannula, you're really pushing those vessels out of the way. You're
Mhm.
not necessarily, and again, it can perforate, but you're also not pushing anything into it. So
Right.
even if you do bleed, it's a bruise and it's not a clot, right? We're not talking about necessarily putting something into the vessel.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's really interesting and something that intrigues me too. Um, so
The
guys,
safety
coming.
factor, the safety factor with the threads is really reassuring, just because you know that you've got control over where you're putting it,
Right.
and it's I don't want to say non-evasive because it's slightly evasive, but it's much more safe, much more safe.
So how are threads, and let's talk about safety for a minute. So what are the risks? What are are there any safety concerns? Can you be allergic? I got this question yesterday. Can you be allergic to these materials? Can we
So
attach these materials?
an allergic reaction is rare, but you could have some type of anti or inflammatory immunodeficiency, or if you have a high level of rheumatoid arthritis, for example, you're more sensitive to having an inflammatory
Foreign
response.
body. Mhm.
Correct, correct. So we have a whole list of contraindications for individuals, but really the vast majority of people don't fall into those categories, and you're not going to have complications. And what's really nice is if somebody, for example, doesn't like the results and they're just not happy, you can have the threads removed. They're removable. You can cook them with laser and melt them. So the results are not going to be forever and ever and ever and permanent. And that's a nice reassuring standpoint for a patient, because they know worst case scenario, they can have it fixed.
Right. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's nothing like using a crochet hook to get them out. It's
Those
I've only
learning
I've
experience.
only had to do it once. But that's all it takes. So, let's right, that's all it takes to change, your patient selection is really what it came down to. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And
So
post care, if you are really,
yes.
adamant with your patients about, hey, no large facial movements a week after you have
Yes.
any clogged threads put in. Don't use your clarisonic. Don't use any type of ultrasonic device. Don't rub down. I mean, basic common sense, but going through that list with them and helping them understand that their post care is as important as the treatment itself when it comes to threads.
Right, which was never part of the old company's, protocols. I always used to say, "No hoagies, no comedy shows," but, and I guess you're Chicago, right? No hoagies? You don't know
Yes.
what I'm talking about, but that's okay. Subs. But the truth is, you're right, no exaggerated facial movements. We wanna let these things, it's only 25 degrees, right? So it's not like it's a fish hook.
Right.
So we're trying to keep that skin attached, and that is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, we want it to keep continuing to make collagen. So that collagen, um, we don't want to break these down too quickly, right? So by that same token, you said no clarisonics, don't laser over top of them. I think docs a lot forget that the patient has a thread in and they go to do NIR or which is a lot of heat, guys, or they go to do something like a Morpheus, which again is microneedling with radio frequency. So it breaks them down, right?
Yep, and having that conversation with the patient prior to the treatment of, hey, we don't want you to have any laser for 3 to 6 months, and really closer to 6 months if you want to play it safe. Um, Having that conversation with them so they understand the importance of their participation in their recovery and healing of the treatment as well.
And at that 6 months, are they pretty well dissolved to the point where if you do a laser over top of them, you're not doing them a disservice?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Now,
Okay.
the PCL, it takes much longer for it to dissolve,
Okay. Oh,
but
that's good to okay.
yeah, but generally speaking, if you're doing something about 6 months post, you're fine.
Okay.
Yep, that's our
And
standard protocol.
how often do you like to throw in the smooths?
It depends.
Yeah.
It really depends. So, generally speaking, if you have threads within 6 months in that treatment area, you want to give yourself a 6 month window because you don't want the injector, running into other threads that are still trying to do their job. So, about 6 months in between that treatment area, but very seldom where you need threads in the same area within 6 months anyway. So,
Okay.
6 months.
Okay. All right. So let's see. Let me see what I missed here. What is your favorite thread?
The PLLA
Okay.
monos,
Okay.
it beautiful volume, nice smooth skin. I If I could insert them myself, I think we'd have a real problem.
Oh, yes.
Every day.
We'll send you back to med school or nursing school, right?
Oh gosh.
All right. So the only part we didn't talk about, and I think there's a couple. We talked about crow's feet. A little bit. We talked about on the eye. So again, if you don't like your crow's feet Botox, we can kind of thread those, which is
Mhm.
amazing. I love that. We can do the same thing under the eye to give a little bit more fullness and less crepiness. Um, let's briefly talk about nasolabial folds because I
Yes.
think that's a
Yes.
big one where filler is oftentimes not the right place to put it.
Right.
Um,
So a lot of the pullback threads or cog threads will help alleviate that nasolabial fold line that so many don't like. But for the deeper, deeper wrinkles, we've got mono threads that are 8 threads folded in half and put onto a cannula in a special little process. And it's called the multi-thread.
oh, I
So
just
when
saw that
you,
actually today.
yeah, when you use the multi-thread, it's like putting 16 threads in one shot. So it fans out, it creates amazing volume. You can use them here, you can use them to fill in the temples, you can use them down here, you can use them anywhere you want to have a large amount of volume created. And those nasolabial folds just vanish with the multi threads. Just pops
And
them right
you
away.
only need one in each spot?
Depends on how deep.
Yeah.
Depends on how
Okay.
deep and how severe, but it really, really works. We also have a triple screw and a double screw thread. It, as you can imagine, creates twice or 3 times as much volume as a regular screw thread. So it really depends on the patient. And unfortunately, threading is not a paint by numbers
Yeah.
game. It's not. So there's a wide variety of threads that can be used in a different combination for each patient. And depending on what they want and what you've got, you can take care of it.
Well, and that's why Les Encres is so novel, let's be honest. I mean, yes, you're novel because you have these amazing products that are sourced in South Korea, but, I mean, you have a massive variety of threads to choose from. That multi-thread, and again, something I've never purchased and I don't think I've ever seen, is pretty amazing. I'll be buying that today too, guys. Um, my rep already has my partial order sitting in her inbox, so um, I think that's amazing that we have these options, different lengths, different thicknesses.
We have over 60 different thread types, and that's overwhelming for some injectors because they're like, I don't even know where to begin.
Right.
And start with the mono, start with the twists, and build your way up in your practice. And you will start to develop your favorite thread selection and you'll have your go-to threads. But it's wonderful from an injector standpoint to really have such a vast array of tools in their tool chest when it comes to threading.
Oh, that's amazing. I know. When I looked at it at first too, I was like, "Oh, wow, I don't know where I would have started. But now, I mean, I have my faves, and now apparently I'm going to have more favorites. So you guys are just going to have to book more thread appointments, and we'll just keep going with it. So, really quickly, we have about 3 minutes, maybe. I want to talk a little bit about, and I just want to put out there, we can use it for scarring. Um,
Okay.
I think acne scarring is a huge one, and I think it's again underestimated because I actually do a lot of filling of acne scars with filler for people that are they're just so deep that I can laser them till they're blue in the face and it's not going to do anything. And it looks phenomenal on some of the deeper stuff. But how amazing is it to throw in a whole bunch of smooth mono threads to actually raise up the layers a little bit and get more collagen and get them reduced? Um,
Mhm.
to me, that's one of the best ways to use threads because I just can't get into those spaces. But what about body threads? I actually have not dabbled in that as of yet. But I would love to hear your discussion on body threads for the next couple of minutes.
So anywhere that you can put threads with soft tissue, whether it's in the thighs for the crepey skin, a knee lift with the mono threads, on the buttocks, you can use our threads anywhere. So there's often a thought of, oh, well, you can't, for the face only. It's, no, 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 you can use them anywhere, anywhere, which is really, really refreshing. Very refreshing. A lot of people do it on the back of the arms for bat wings.
Okay. And
Hmm.
breast lift, I've seen some breast lift, belly, I've done some C-section scars, belly lift,
Hmm.
especially for that crepey little kind of overhang if you're already thin and you just have that overhang. Um, the other oh, I just had a thought in my head that I just lost. The other place that I was thinking of, was so we do some vaginal rejuvenation.
Hmm.
So we use, Morpheus, we use, a product called Votiva it's for internal. Can you use smooth threads to help labia?
You can actually, and we've got a wonderful surgeon out in Thousand Oaks, California, who is studying the use of our barb threads for vaginal
For
rejuvenation,
lifting, okay.
prolapse. Yep, absolutely. So she has done the labia. She has done all kinds of amazing work with the rejuvenation of the threads using that in the area, and it's truly amazing.
Are they using PDO or are they primarily using, like, the, PCLs?
The PDO.
PDO.
Yep.
Got you. Okay. All right. So I think I got everything. We got jowl, we got chin, we got jawline, mid cheek, neck, body lift. And guys, if you can email me personally if you're interested in body lift threads. I mean, I have thought about it for a while and everybody's been bugging me to do them. I just don't know if I want to get into that kind of crazy right now.
That's fine.
But we can talk about that. You can email me at info@mydrlori.com, mydrlori.com. And I am probably forever a Les Encres user now. I don't think I will go back to any other brands. It's been a world of difference in time that I need to spend in the patient room too with getting these put in. So if you're interested in doing these, feel free to message me. You can go onto their website too. I actually went on their website last night and it's a wealth of information about the threads. And a lot of the things we've talked about today are on there. Um, you can even tell me what you want from their website. So just give me a little menu of what you would like. And I think the biggest take home is it's not right for every person. But there are so many aspects to some of these smoother threads that are really replacing what I would consider traditional laser therapy. Um, so for that last 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you guys that if you're interested, you can also go on to mydrlori.com and you can send me a message through there. And hopefully, Stacey, or maybe even one of your injectors or thread placers will come back online with us and we can do some more talking about
Right.
threads. I
Yeah.
will put up a video of us doing the threads. I was hoping to get it in today, but we just kept talking. So I'll get a video in for you guys of threads and put it up on the site so you can see it and have a great night. And thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.